Have you ever wondered how certain people betray their deepest secrets through the very words they speak, completely unaware they're revealing hidden aspects of themselves? It's as if every conversation contains invisible messages that unlock the mysteries of human psychology. Picture yourself at dinner with someone who constantly declares, "I don't need anyone," while desperately seeking your validation for every single decision they make. Or consider that individual who always proclaims, "I hate drama," yet somehow finds themselves at the epicenter of every conflict imaginable. According to Sigmund Freud, the founding father of psychoanalysis, these aren't mere communication mistakes or coincidences. They represent direct windows into our unconscious mind, revealing suppressed desires, concealed fears, and psychological defense mechanisms operating beneath our conscious awareness. Our unconscious mind communicates relentlessly, yet we rarely truly listen to what it's actually telling us. You're about to discover 6 verbal indicators that, according to Freudian theory, expose the most hidden dimensions of human personality. If you want to continue exploring the secrets of human behavior and become more aware of yourself and others around you, make sure to subscribe to the channel. The first indicator involves people who obsessively repeat how incredibly normal they are. When someone begins a sentence with, "I'm a completely normal person, but," stop everything and listen carefully. According to Freud, this represents one of the most revealing statements anyone can make. Imagine knowing Michael, a co-worker who every time he shares something about his life adds, "I'm normal, don't misunderstand me," or "like all normal people do." Michael discusses his relationships, his job, his daily habits, always preceding everything with this compulsive need to emphasize his normalcy. Freud labeled this phenomenon repression, which stands as one of the human mind's most powerful defense mechanisms. When we repress thoughts, impulses, or aspects of ourselves that we consider unacceptable, the unconscious discovers subtle ways to express them. This obsession with normalcy represents exactly one of those methods. The person who continuously repeats their normalcy is actually communicating the opposite message they have within themselves. Impulses, thoughts, or desires they perceive as abnormal and are desperately attempting to keep hidden, even from themselves. It's as though the unconscious is screaming, "Warning, there's something I'm concealing here." This verbal compulsion betrays a profound internal conflict. The more intensely someone insists on their normalcy, the more likely they're struggling against aspects of themselves they judge unacceptable according to social or family standards they've internalized. Freud observed that what we define as normal is often simply what society has taught us to accept. But the unconscious doesn't recognize these social rules. It only knows authentic desires and primordial impulses. When these clash with our ideal of normalcy, this compulsive need emerges to reassure others and ourselves that we're okay. The next time you hear someone repeatedly emphasizing how normal they are, ask yourself, what are they hiding? And more importantly, have you ever noticed this pattern in yourself? But there's a second indicator, even more subtle, that concerns how we talk about other people. That person is so selfish. He's a born manipulator. I can't stand how he's always angry. If you listen carefully, you'll notice some people always have something to criticize in others, always the same type of flaw. Imagine Sarah, who never misses an opportunity to point out how others are fake and self-serving. During coffee breaks, at happy hours, in WhatsApp messages, Sarah always has a story about someone who behaved in a self-serving manner. Her conversation becomes an endless catalogue of fake people she's encountered. Freud identified in this behavior what he called projection, one of the most revealing defense mechanisms of the human unconscious. Projection occurs when we attribute to others the qualities we cannot accept in ourselves. Sarah, who sees fakeness everywhere, is most likely projecting her own difficulty in being authentic. Her unconscious recognizes in others what she cannot admit about herself, her own self-serving behaviors, her social masks, her struggle to be genuine. It's a mechanism that's simultaneously brilliant and cruel. Brilliant because it protects us from the pain of recognizing our own flaws. Cruel because it prevents us from growing and makes us live in a distorted world where the problem is always other people. Freud observed that what most annoys us in others is often what we most fear about ourselves. The person who constantly criticizes others' selfishness might be struggling with their own selfish impulses. Those who see manipulation everywhere might be unconsciously manipulative themselves. This doesn't mean all criticisms are projections, but when a pattern repeats obsessively, when someone always sees the same flaw in others, the unconscious is probably speaking. Projection allows us to maintain a positive self-image by dumping onto others everything we cannot accept about our own personality. It's like looking into a distorting mirror that reflects our dark sides onto other people's faces. Have you ever noticed which flaws you criticize most often in others? It might be time to ask yourself if you're seeing a reflection of yourself. But there exists a third indicator that concerns how we talk about our successes. It was just luck. I'm not good. I just got lucky. Anyone in my position would have done better. Do you know someone who systematically devalues every success they achieve? According to Freud, behind this apparent modesty hides something much more complex. Imagine Alexander, a successful professional who every time he receives recognition attributes it to luck, circumstances, everything except his own abilities. When he gets promoted, it was the right timing. When he wins an award, the other candidates were weak. When clients appreciate him, I had easy projects. Freud identified in this behavior what he called reaction formation, a defense mechanism where we express the opposite of what we truly feel to protect ourselves from emotions that are too intense. Alexander, who devalues every success, might be struggling against an ego he perceives as too large, too dangerous. Perhaps as a child, he learned that being good, proud, or ambitious was unacceptable. Perhaps he lived in an environment where humility was the only recognized virtue. But the unconscious reveals the truth. This false modesty often conceals a desperate need for control and recognition. By devaluing his successes, Alexander protects himself from the possibility of future failure. If he never has merit, he can never truly fail. It's also a subtle way to obtain reassurance. When he says, "It was luck," Alexander unconsciously hopes others will contradict him, confirm his worth. It's a cry for help, disguised as modesty. Freud observed that often what we most fear being becomes what we most deny being. Those who fear their own arrogance develop excessive humility. Those who fear their own selfishness become compulsively altruistic. True modesty is quiet. It doesn't need to proclaim itself. When someone must constantly tell us how modest they are, they're probably fighting against opposite impulses. This systematic devaluation of one's own merits also prevents personal growth. How can you improve something if you never acknowledge being good at it? It's a vicious cycle that keeps the person in a comfort zone made of self-imposed mediocrity. Do you recognize this pattern in someone you know, or perhaps in yourself? But there's a fourth indicator that concerns how we talk about the past. I don't remember anything from that year. Strange, but that phase of my life has completely disappeared from my memory. I guess it wasn't important. When someone has systematic memory gaps about certain periods of their life, Freud teaches us it's rarely coincidental. Imagine Linda, who speaks freely about her childhood, college years, current job, but when it comes to her early marriage years, becomes vague. Well, it wasn't an interesting period. Nothing particular happened. Honestly, I remember almost nothing. Freud called this phenomenon selective repression, the unconscious ability to erase from conscious memory events too painful or threatening to our psychological stability. Linda might have experienced during that marriage events that too violently contradicted the image she had of herself. Perhaps she discovered she was capable of extreme jealousy, manipulation, cruelty. Perhaps she experienced betrayals, humiliations, or behaved in ways she now judges unacceptable. The unconscious, to protect psychological balance, simply archived that period in an inaccessible zone of the mind. It's not forgetfulness, it's protection. This mechanism reveals something profound about the person. The forgotten periods are often those where we showed aspects of ourselves we'd prefer didn't exist. The rebellious adolescence, the depression period, the toxic relationship, the year of professional failure. But Freud observed that what we repress doesn't truly disappear. It continues to influence us from the unconscious, creating behavioral patterns, irrational fears, excessive reactions we cannot rationally explain. Linda, who has forgotten her marriage, might find herself with inexplicable anxieties in subsequent relationships, intimacy, fears she cannot connect to concrete experiences, emotional reactions disproportionate to apparently innocent situations. Selective amnesia is also a way to maintain a coherent identity. If we remembered everything about ourselves, every moment of weakness, every deplorable behavior, every unconfessable thought, perhaps we couldn't live with ourselves. But this voluntary oblivion has a price. It prevents us from learning from our mistakes and integrating all parts of ourselves into a mature and aware personality. When someone has systematic holes in their biography, they're probably protecting a secret they don't even know they have. Have you ever noticed these memory gaps in your personal story? Are there periods of your life you prefer not to remember? But there exists a fifth indicator that concerns how we talk about the future. I live day by day. I never make plans. I let life surprise me. Who can know what will happen tomorrow? Do you know people who have made total improvisation a way of life? Freud saw in this attitude much more than a simple philosophy of spontaneous living. Imagine Robert, who cannot plan a dinner more than 2 days in advance. He doesn't know where he'll go on vacation until the week before. He constantly changes his mind about work projects. He lives in an eternal present where the future is always nebulous and undefined. Freud identified in this behavior what he called phobic avoidance, not of situations, but of the responsibility that comes from making conscious choices. Robert, who refuses planning, might be fleeing from the anxiety that arises from confronting his real desires. Planning means admitting what we truly want, and this can be terrifying if our desires contradict the image we have of ourselves. It's also a way to avoid the possibility of failure. If you don't make plans, you can't fail to realize them. If you don't have clear goals, you can't be disappointed by not reaching them. It's a sophisticated form of ego protection. But the unconscious reveals another truth. Often those who refuse to plan are afraid of their own power. They're afraid of discovering that if they truly committed, if they made conscious and determined choices, they could achieve much more than they allow themselves to imagine. Freud observed that some avoid success as much as failure. Both change the status quo. Both require taking on responsibilities they'd prefer to avoid. Compulsive spontaneity often hides a desperate need for control. Paradoxically, those who say they let life surprise them are actually rigidly controlling every situation by avoiding committing to anything that might slip out of their hands. It's also a way to keep all options open, to never have to say no to anything, to never have to truly choose. But Freud reminds us that choosing also means giving up, and giving up can reactivate ancient pains of loss we'd prefer not to feel. Robert, who lives day by day, might be protecting an inner child who once suffered too much for a failed project, an unkept promise, a broken dream. The flight from planning is often flight from one's authenticity. It's easier to adapt to circumstances than admit who we are and what we truly want. Do you recognize this pattern in someone you know? Or perhaps are you also avoiding looking too far ahead in time? But there's one last indicator, perhaps the most revealing of all. I never judge anyone. Everyone is free to live as they want. Who am I to say what's right or wrong? Sounds like the epitome of modern tolerance, right? But Freud teaches us that often people who proclaim they never judge are precisely those who judge the most. Imagine Francis, who begins every criticism with, "I don't want to judge, but..." Every observation she makes about colleagues, friends, politicians, celebrities is preceded by this magic formula that should absolve her from any responsibility for what she's about to say. Freud called this mechanism denial, affirming the opposite of what one is actually doing to maintain a positive self-image. Frances, who declares she never judges, is actually constantly judging. The difference is, she does it while hiding it from herself, which makes her judgments even more rigid and less conscious. It's a mechanism that reveals a profound conflict on one hand, the need to express one's opinions and evaluations, which is natural and human. On the other hand, the idealization of herself as a person who is superiorly tolerant and understanding. The result is an even more insidious form of judgment. When Frances says, "I don't judge," but that girl is really superficial, she's not only judging, but she's also positioning herself morally above both the girl she judges and people who judge openly. Freud observed that those who completely deny their capacity to judge often have developed a superego, the part of personality that represents moral norms so rigid that they cannot admit even to themselves having strong opinions about others' behaviors. This attitude prevents authentic emotional maturation. Judgment, used consciously, is a tool for moral navigation. It helps us understand what we appreciate, what we find unacceptable, what our values are. The person who denies judging deprives themselves of this internal compass, remaining in a position of false neutrality that often hides even deeper and unexamined prejudices. It's also a way to avoid confrontation. If you never judge, you can't be judged for your judgments. It's a sophisticated form of protection from others' criticism, but the unconscious always reveals the truth in pauses, in eloquent silences, in the but that follows declarations of non-judgment, in the very choice of topics to discuss. Frances might discover that her non-judgments follow precise patterns, revealing her true values and prejudices much more clearly than open and honest criticism would. True tolerance doesn't need to proclaim itself. It shows in facts, in choices, in authentic listening. Those who must constantly tell us how tolerant they are probably are struggling against judgmental impulses they prefer not to recognize. Have you ever noticed this pattern in yourself or others? According to Freud, we are not masters even of our own words. The unconscious always speaks, through every sentence, every pause, every denial. The question is, are we willing to listen to it? How many times have you recognized yourself in these patterns? How many times have you heard your unconscious speaking without realizing it? And most importantly, what would you do if you truly started listening to what your words are revealing about you? If this video made you think, write in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to know where the bravest people come from, those willing to look inside themselves without fear. Like this video, if you think others should also know these secrets of the unconscious, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other revelations about human behavior, and share this video with someone who might recognize themselves in these patterns. Thank you for having the courage to explore with me the most hidden territories of the human mind. Your curiosity and open-mindedness make this community a special place to grow and always discover something new about ourselves. What city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below and let me know.